Dr. Anthony Harper here, blessed to be at CPAC with Penny Young Nance. I know you're the CEO and president of Concerned Women for America.
That's right, yes.
And this is quite the CPAC event.
Yes.
So what are your top concerns for women's issues?
Well, we're a pro-life conservative women's organization, and we also have Young Women for America. We have 285 Young Women for America chapters on college campuses all over this country. And we have 7 core issues: life, marriage, we have local control of education, we're in favor of ESAs, we're fighting sexual exploitation, we believe in national sovereignty, religious freedom, and support for Israel. And so those are our key issues. Of course, our YWA, Young Women for America chapters, have been so active at this point after October the 7th, doing prayer vigils for the Jewish students in support of Israel on their college campuses, taking straight on the antisemitism and the pro-Hamas movement that's happening on campuses everywhere. And I was just here at CPAC talking about the issue of life. And as a nation, as conservatives, we need to recognize that every single human being is created in the image of God and deserves our respect, our dignity, and our support. And that means from conception to natural death. And it is regardless of cognitive ability or physical ability, we support life as a nation. We need to be in a nation that embraces life, and we're working towards that day. The most exciting time in my career was the day I stood on the steps of the Supreme Court and got to hear the beautiful words that there's no constitutional right to abortion, as the overturn of Roe v. Wade happened. And once again, we have the opportunity to bring people to our side, and the heavy hand of the judiciary was not forcing states to have a position that allowed abortion up to viability, which was like 24 weeks. We have a lot of states that have come our way since. Some states have been more leftist on the issue of abortion, but overall, about 60,000 babies have been saved since the overturn of Roe.
Well, what you said about the Supreme Court saying that there's no constitutional right for abortion, but I know that it was justified that there was a constitutional right for abortion back then, so why not? I thought about, what about the constitutional right for life? Which I think about the Declaration of Independence,
right.
That we're endowed with the rights of life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness.
That's right.
Do you know why the Supreme Court didn't deal with the issue that the constitutional right of life for the child?
Well, it was actually a group of men, no women. There was 7 out of 9 men who wanted to make law in their own image as opposed to following the Constitution. And it took 50 years for us to be able to regain our balance. And President Trump appointed 3 Supreme Court justices, and it changed the balance of the court, enabled us to put forward the Dobbs decision. That was a Mississippi case that Lynn Fitch out of Mississippi, the beautiful AG from Mississippi, a woman, was able to bring it before the court and overturned Roe, and gave us an opportunity. It didn't even make abortion immediately illegal. Some people really misunderstood that. It just gave people like me an opportunity to tell our story and to convince people in many states that abortion takes a human life. A human baby's heart starts to beat at 6 weeks gestation. By the time you get to 16 weeks, the baby has all her major organ, can hear and respond to her mother's voice, has fingernails and eyebrows, and can feel pain. She's a part of our human family and has civil rights, deserves to be protected. And so that's where we are. We're making the case. We're fighting for alternatives to abortion. A really important piece of legislation that we're working on full steam ahead, and we'd like everybody to help us, is something called life.gov. You know, if you want to know all the alternatives to abortion, you have to go to numerous websites to find out what that is, and I'm not sure you ever could. However, in this legislation, we require HHS to list by zip code and state all the alternatives that currently exist right now for a woman who wants to choose life. Health care, legal help, educational resources, housing, foster care, adoption, all the things that are available to her that she doesn't even know is out there for her. And so I would ask everyone to call your congressman and your senator, ask them to support life.gov in the House. It's called Standing with Moms Act in the Senate. Ask your member of Congress to sponsor, to co-sponsor the bill. The bigger number of co-sponsors we have, the more likely it is that it will come to the floor and actually be voted on.
Okay, your website for Concerned Women.
ConcernedWomen.org is our website. Come find out about what we're doing around the country. Follow us on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and also our Young Women for America resources. You can find out about all of that. They have their own social media, so Young Women for America.
Looking back, when I was thinking about the Supreme Court decision that happened in June of last year?
22, yeah.
Okay. So I was there at the White House, and you were at the Supreme Court that day?
That day we were standing at the Supreme Court because we were waiting for the decision to come down.
For the decision. So I was at the White House, and the press secretary, she canceled the press meetings that day. She didn't want to deal with this issue.
I'm sure she didn't.
And I was at her office asking her about about a child's right to life, face to face, and she turned away from me and walked back into her room and shut the door.
Yes, I'm sure.
It was just, it really, the silence was...
deafening.
Oh boy, was it?
Yes. Well, they want to silence you.
Yes.
And they want to silence all those little children, all their voices, and we can't let them.
I've been also thinking about how many people may have heard about really calling for the judges to hear the screams of the children that are being killed in abortion. I'm wondering how much prayer is going up.
So much prayer.
That the White House will hear the screams of the children. I wonder what impact that would make.
Yes, well,
would it cause them to stop this?
There's some very hard hearts in this White House. And there's very hard hearts in Congress and some very hard hearts around our nation. You know, I think the numbers tell the story that we're a less religious nation. And if you don't believe there's a God, you don't believe in natural law, you don't believe in truth, then anything goes. And the fact that there is objective truth, there is natural law, and there's a God, it has to be an important part of our story. Because if there are all those things, then there's consequences for choices. And we know there are, because we know women have been so deeply harmed and carry such a burden. When I was in there, I talked about when you're in a room of that big, I don't know, there's like 1,500 people in there or more, 1 in 4 women in this country have had an abortion. You're talking to people who have had an abortion or men who participated in an abortion in some way. And what I tell them is there's room at the cross with all of us at sinners. There's nothing bad enough that anyone could ever do that God cannot forgive them and love them and restore them. And so there's no need to carry that shame. There's forgiveness. And I ask for it every morning and need it renewed every day, God's mercy and grace. In our movement, we're working for the mother and the child, and not just for the moment. You know, the lie is that we only care about the child when it's in utero. That is absolutely such a lie. In fact, it's a projection. They only care about the baby and the mother for just a moment until she gets their money and they kill the baby. And then they don't ever want to hear from her again, even if she's in some way harmed emotionally or even physically. They want nothing to do with her. We're the people that will bring her into our home and love her and help her find her way.
About other women's issues, you're concerned about the sex trafficking that is going on,
yes.
Human trafficking.
Yes.
Sound of Freedom movie, you saw that?
Yes, absolutely. You know, that's real. And I would start with the fact, and sexual exploitation, fighting that's one of our core issues. And I would start with the fact that the sex trafficking trade wouldn't happen if there was no demand. These victims are worth money time after time after time. So, any man that's ever used a prostitute, any man that's ever paid for pornography, any man that has been involved in some way, gone to a strip joint, any of these things, they are profiting off of someone else's pain. I recently on my podcast interviewed a young man who spent years in the pornography movement, and now he's a pastor. And he tells the story, and the story is that he saw all the time women being brought in by their pimp, taking their paycheck and forcing them to do these movies that men paid for out of their own free will, and that sex traffickers profited from. In some cases, it was women who had been, seeing men in whatever hotel and motel and were being beaten up at the end of the night, and this was a step up for them. But no one had anything for them and told them, once you've done this, there's no way out. No one will ever hire you. There's no choice for you. No one ever wants to marry you. And that's such a lie out of hell. It's not true. And there's redemption, and we want to help all of these women, but we also need to recognize that if we're going to be the abolition movement on sex trafficking, it starts with the men in our country. That's the reality. For them to make a pledge of purity and to stop the destructive behavior they're doing and stop hurting and abusing another woman, because that's what that comes from. That's how that's made.
It's very troubling.
It is.
On so many levels. So thank you for joining me today about these very crucial issues. You probably know my good friend, maybe Brandy Swindwell,
yes,
Dr.
yes.
Alveda King.
Yes, awesome. Great women, incredible women. I'm glad to be with you, and would love to have the link so we can put it out there on social media.
I'd love to. And so once again, your website for
it's concernedwomen.org. Find everything you need to know. Thank you.
Thank you so
God bless
much.
you, brother.